Alright guys, so today we are going to be starting our chapter 2, which is the review of chemistry. And essentially what we're looking at is the chemical level of organization. So remember in chapter 1 we talked about levels of organization, and we started with atoms, and then atoms made up molecules and compounds, and then those made up macromolecules. And so essentially we're going to be looking at those three levels. And so objective 1 is just simply some terms to know. And honestly, almost every single one of these, if not all of them, are going to be covered as we go throughout this lesson. So we're going to go ahead and move to objective 2. And so we just have some simple definitions here, or a simple definition here. And the first one is matter. And matter is just anything that has mass and takes up space. And so most of us are pretty familiar with the three states of matter. You know, they're solids, they're tightly compacted and close together, doesn't want to have a lot of movement between the molecules, and so those are going to be things like the floor that you're standing on, the paper that you're writing on, the clothes that you're wearing. Then we have liquids like the water in your water bottle, your coffee, and then we have gas, which includes the air around us. Now, not everything has mass and takes up space, and so there are some things that are not matter. And essentially these items here are either forces or a type of energy. So like light energy, heat energies, sound is a type of wave that is a type of energy. And so the rest of these things are forces like magnetism and gravity. And so pretty much matters anything that takes up space. So things that are not matter, out of these four, air contains gases, water is a liquid, muscle would be a solid, so energy is not an example of matter. Now, anything that is matter and has mass and takes up space is going to be composed of atoms. So atoms are the basic unit of matter, and a lot of our lesson today is going to focus on atoms and their parts and knowing the number of parts and how they behave and how they bond. And so this is a really good backbone type of content that you're going to need to know to understand kind of the rest of the unit. And so once again, atoms make up everything, okay? Atoms make up the air, they make up liquids, they make up solids, atoms make up everything. And so there's two main parts to the atom. You have the nucleus, which is found in the inside. So like over here is the nucleus, over here is the nucleus. And then you have the electron cloud, and it's called a cloud because the electrons that are on the outside, they're constantly moving around, okay? They're not stationary, they're full of energy. And so a lot of times, even though we can't see them, because of that motion, it would kind of give the illusion of a haze or a cloud. And so the two main parts are going to consist of smaller parts, and so we call these subatomic particles. And so sub just means below, so these are going to be the smaller parts that make up the atom itself. And so the first two that we're going to look at are protons and neutrons. And protons and neutrons are what you will find in the nucleus, okay? So protons have a positive charge. This is how we could kind of abbreviate the word proton, the symbol that's used to represent it. Protons are positively charged, and neutrons are neutral. They don't have a charge at all, okay? So both of these are found in the nucleus. It's these two particles that are going to give the atom its mass, okay? So once again, matter is anything that has mass and takes up space. So even though they're incredibly tiny and we can't even begin to see them, these two particles here are going to give the mass to the atom, and we find them in the nucleus. And then the other particle are your electrons. They have a negative charge, so you can see their symbol here. And these are the ones that are kind of moving around out here in the electron cloud. All right, so you have your positive protons, your neutral neutrons, and your negative electrons. Protons and neutrons are in the nucleus, and the electrons are found outside of the nucleus in the electron cloud. Now, notice we have some charges here. protons are positive, and electrons are negative. And so atoms, if anytime you see the word atom, you know that it is going to be neutral. And what that means is there's not an overall charge, okay? And so in order for that to happen, the protons, which are positive, are going to have to be the same as the electrons, which are negative. And we're going to come back to this concept here in a little bit, okay? So once again, atoms make up everything. They consist of a nucleus and an electron cloud. Inside of the nucleus, you'll find protons, which are positive, and neutrons, which are neutral. And then outside of that, you'll find the electrons in the electron cloud. So first question, what are the two parts of an atom? And that is going to be your nucleus and your electron cloud. And then in your handouts, you have a chart that looks like this. And this is actually what one of your essays could be about, are your subatomic particles and kind of their characteristics. So we've already kind of talked about the symbols. Remember that electrons, negative, okay, so E and a negative symbol. Protons are positive, so P and a positive symbol, and neutrons are neutral. The electrons are in the cloud, and the other two particles are found in the nucleus. Electrons are negative, protons positive, neutrons are neutral. They don't have a charge at all. I kind of mentioned this, it's not written in the slide before, but your protons and your neutrons are going to give the mass to the atom, and this unit here stands for an atomic mass unit. And essentially the atoms are so tiny and the mass is so small that they kind of had to make up their own unit in order to define the mass. So a proton and a neutron both have a mass of 1 AMU. And then the electrons, really, they're so much tinier than that we pretty much say that the mass of an electron is approximately 0. So this is already a tiny number in grams, which we're about to see. And so if you take a fraction of that number, it's literally almost non-existent. So once again, your protons and your neutrons are responsible for the mass. So these numbers just mean that it's really small. It's a decimal with lots and lots of numbers after it, okay? And so these have a little bit of mass, and these are even smaller than that, so we just say that they don't have mass. All right, our next question. Match the description with the subatomic particle. So just kind of a quick review. Protons are positive, found in the nucleus. Neutrons are neutral, found in the nucleus. Electrons are negative, found in the cloud. So on number 1, the nucleus of an atom, that's going to be your protons and your neutrons. Negative charge would be your electrons. Mass, once again, protons and neutrons together. Positive is proton, and electron cloud is electron. So this is the kind of information that you're going to need to know for one of your possible essays. All right, so earlier we said that atoms are kind of like the basic unit of your elements, and so what is an element? An element is a pure substance that can't be broken down into anything else. So it's essentially, it is what it is. You know, sodium is sodium, iron is iron, gold is gold. And so an element is composed of the same kind of atoms. Like the smallest unit of an element is 1 atom of that element. And so we're going to look at counting subatomic particles and things like that here in a video that's coming soon. And we're probably going to talk about it in class, actually. But the elements are determined by the number of protons. So this particular periodic table doesn't have numbers on it, but like hydrogen has 1 proton. And so if an atom has 1 proton, it's hydrogen. Helium has 2 protons. So if an atom has 2, it is helium. If that proton number changes, then it's a different element. And so these are your pure substances that essentially make up everything in the universe. Now, we're going to go ahead and move to objective 3 because it kind of ties in with elements. And of all the elements in the periodic table, as you saw, there were over 100. There are four elements that make up about 96% of our bodies. Okay, so of all the different elements, we have a lot of them that have particular functions and are involved in our physiology, but 96% of our bodies are made up of oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. Now, at the end of our chemistry unit, or the end of our chemistry review, we're going to talk about macromolecules. And once we start talking about those, it may make a little bit of sense as to why these are your top four, because the main molecules that make up our bodies primarily are carbon compounds. Some of them have nitrogen, like our DNA and our proteins, and then they've got oxygen and hydrogen. Also, a lot of our body is water, and so water is H2O, and so that's another reason why we see these two elements on this list. Now, as I mentioned, these are not the only elements that you'll find. There's a lot of other important elements in the human body, and so if you want to remember those, there's your little device to help you remember those. And so here you have your top four. They are included in that list, but some other ones that you might find in the human body that are very important are phosphorus. That's going to be in those macromolecules. Potassium is a very important ion that we'll talk about. Iodine, sulfur, calcium. Most of us know about calcium because we've always been told to drink our milk so that we have calcium for our bones, iron, and magnesium. And so these are going to have important roles in metabolism. So, but we definitely need to know the four elements that make up the human body, and we'll talk more about those molecules and compounds that contain them later. All right, so which of the following minerals makes up 96% of the human body? So now really this should say which is one of the four that make up 96%, because by itself it doesn't. But one of the choices that is on that list of four is going to be carbon. And carbon kind of forms the backbone of a lot of our life molecules. And that is going to take us through objectives 1 through 3. And I'll see you in the next video.